Good afternoon. Welcome to the Buck Stops here. I'm Rick Dancer. This is Gina. And Gina's you've been city council meetings before. Have you been talking about the same thing?
Well, more or less for the city ordinance with illegal transfer.
You've been supporting that.
Absolutely.
So Gina is a nurse in town. A what?
CNA.
A CNA. Her ex-husband is a drug addict.
Correct. An alcoholic.
And lives on the streets of Eugene under a bridge or bridges in the community. And because there's a whole bunch to this story, but we're not going to get into all that because some of it's really personal. But what's intriguing is your husband's kind of a big deal in these camps, and there's a subculture that lives out there, and you were allowed to come in and ask questions. You were just, because you're curious, and you were asking questions, plus you were honestly trying to help your ex-husband. I'm going to keep doing that. You were trying to help him, not by enabling him, but actually to get him out, and then you realized that wasn't going to happen. And we're not going to mention his name either. No. But the thing is, I'm here ready to listen to this story. So tell me what you experienced when you saw that guy. I think I sat down and had coffee with her the other day, with Gina, and there's a subculture that lives out there that I think most of us know nothing about and don't understand, and we're frustrated. And here's the thing I want to bring up before we really start here too, is we are not unsympathetic with the homeless issue in our community, but we think that there are two issues here. And just to give you an example, the other day I was out here, and there's some folks out here with camps all over Fifth Street Public Market, and a woman who is homeless walked up to me and said, "Rick, I am not this. I'm not on drugs, I'm not using, I am a person, I don't live here, I am in a shelter somewhere, I'm looking, but I'm basically homeless, I've been in my car for quite a bit of time, and this is not who I am, and people are perceiving me as being this." And it doesn't mean the people that are in these drug addicted folks and alcoholics, they're not bad people, but they have a bad problem, and it's now becoming our problem. So that's where we're starting the conversation. So please do not make this into
a homeless issue.
Right, and we're not anti-homeless, we're not uncompassionate, we're not any of those things. What we want to do is identify this problem and then stop enabling it and actually get help for the people who actually need help. And I know there's advocacy groups out there, and you're doing your work, and we applaud you. But the other thing is, she's been there and seen this. And so, Gina, tell me what you saw in those camps.
So, initially, my ex-husband brought me down where he was living in a homeless camp. And there's a large community down there, and you wouldn't notice them unless you actually went looking for them. And in these camps, there is like a hierarchy as far as I guess seniority, so to speak. You have this person up here and this person and this person. However, I was astounded at some of these people's lives that I encountered. I mean, some of these people had amazing lives, highly educated, university educations, and at one point in their life had their act together, but drugs and alcohol took over. So they're in this situation and they're homeless, and I took the opportunity after gaining their trust, spending lots of time down there, and it's really sad watching it, because you have people coming in and using heroin and methamphetamines is really big in that community.
I was talking to a friend of mine that works at the hospital, and they said they're having a huge problem right now. Some really bad heroin is on the streets of Eugene, and it's sending these folks to the emergency room.
And they're mixing it with fentanyl.
So so when you're down there, one of the things you were telling me, and we're not accusing everyone.
No.
We're
no,
just
no,
saying this is an issue in our community, and we also have a huge theft issue in our community.
Yes.
What did you see in relation to that?
So, wondering how my ex-husband got his money, because he would have $75, $100, $150 on him at a time.
What?
Oh yeah. And you know, he would go out and spend money, and it would be gone, of course, because it would go mostly on drugs. And I showed up one day and I noticed that he had a lot of copper that needed stripping, and he was stripping it. And I asked him what it was for. And so you have to understand that the people I'm referring to are a subculture. They're not the homeless population out there that are being clumped in with these people that are stealing and breaking into businesses, but that's what they do. They are stealing from businesses, they're breaking in, they're taking whatever they can walk away from. If a car is stolen and it's stripped, they have a specific place that they take these vehicles and they strip them. I was shown that. It's also the place where my son's vehicle was stolen just before he was deployed for the first time, and we were able to recover it. But
so there's a system.
There's a system. They have a system, and they do all of this at night, usually between the hours of 11, and they stop between 3 and 4 is what I was told. And then in the daytime, they scrap everything at a scrap yard that will give them cash. So there is a place, and I drove there, so I know it's there.
Just don't mention any names.
Yeah, no names.
Okay.
And basically they just take all their scrap and they load it on their carts on the back of their bike, and they'll take it over there. You just need ID. That's all you need, no questions asked, and they give them cash, and that's how they're making their money. They're also running scams on the stores. They will send what they call a booster into the store. It's someone who's dressed nice, looks like Rick or myself. They're cleaned up, and they send them in so they won't get stopped, and they walk out with a bunch of items, and then they come back, they distribute it amongst the camp, and maybe 1 or 2 individuals will go in and return those items, say it's a gift, whatnot, and they have money.
So the hard part of this is, and I'm seeing people writing on here right now, things about that their family member. When you get a family member in this situation, you were saying to me that they don't want to get out. They don't like government. They don't want police control. They don't want people telling them what to do. So are they living there on purpose? They want to be there.
I spoke to over 40 people in that community and outside the community, as well as people that were passing through that specific area in that community, because they would stop off, use drugs, and then head on their way. I, asked them if they could have help, would they get it? Because help is out there. Do you ever want to live in a house again, or have a place of your own, get a job? If these things were possible and plausible for you, is this something that you would want in your life? And I would say that 95% of those people, their answer was no. They're very anti-police. They believe that the government is out to get them. They don't want to pay taxes. And the wording that was used to me was, why should I pay for a place to live when I can stay in my tent where I'm perfectly happy and do what I want? I don't have to follow society's laws and rules. I can go here and go there. I can use as much as I want to. I don't have anyone policing me and telling me what to do. And they know that if they do get caught for something, they're out in a day or two, and that's it. And they have a lot of support, because I've been there when church groups and community outreach comes down and tries to talk to
Well-meaning.
them. Very well-meaning. And they just usually just close up their tents. It's like, sorry.
So what do you do? And again, you guys, we are trying to draw a definition. We're not trying to be unkind, but we have two issues here. We have homelessness in our community, which is there's a ton of people that are living in their cars because they have nowhere else,
Absolutely.
and they're not on drugs or they're not alcoholics. These are people in really hard places.
We're trying to help identify the differences between the two, because unfortunately our actual homeless community is being lumped in with this subculture.
And what you've heard too, and I've asked questions down there. I've gone down and asked people. They're very nice, and I have no issues. I'm not afraid of them. But I've asked them point blank, and all you have to do is ask, and they'll tell me. I don't need money for food. I can get all the services and stuff I need, and they've told me they're using it for drugs. And this is, and you've heard the same thing.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I was confused because so many, have EBT cards. And
Is that, I'm done.
that is a food stamp card.
Okay.
And also, I'm not going to say a lot, but there are quite a few that receive disability checks. And even though they don't have a physical address, there is a place that allows them to receive mail.
So do you think, and I've heard this from people on the streets as well, that Eugene is known all over the country
As a sanctuary.
so that they know that they can come here and not have to do, and that nothing's going to be done.
Absolutely.
What
And
bothers you about that?
what bothers me about that is the simple fact that you have these people coming in from out of state who are coming in and utilizing the free resources that we have to help our homeless community, and they're coming in, and I kind of feel as if they're taking away, even though it's there for them as well. It's enabling them. It is enabling them to continue to live the life in their disease, to continue to use and drink.
So is enabling being compassionate as a community, do you think?
Well,
Is that
empathetic or compassionate?
well,
Because-
compassionate really is a word that I have learned I looked it up, and it means suffer together. So I don't think many people in our community are really suffering together with the people who are on the streets. But
I think that if you have people who are abusing the system and the resources that are set out to help, and then it allows them to continue to live in their disease, and unless they're wanting to make this change and turn the life around, which, by the way, I know a few that have. They're working, they've got homes, they're sober.
Right.
It does happen, but it's because they wanted it to happen. The majority of the people that I spoke with, they don't want to be sober and clean, but as long as they have all these resources that help them out, they're comfortable. Why should they change? And furthermore, why should they leave?
So that would be enabling.
Absolutely.
And is that truly being compassionate to help them with their issue, or are we just prolonging something?
Well, my ex-husband, I had gone and stood by him through 3 drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs. I went to every single one of those meetings, and the number one thing that they tell family members is to stop the enabling, stop giving money, stop making it easy, stop giving them rides.
Every social service agency that I've worked with and know in this community will tell you to send them money. And some people say, well, that's because it's coming to them. They know how to handle the homeless people in our community and deal with these issues. So you give it to St. Vinny's, Good Shelter Care, those kind of agencies that know where to put that money, rather than just handing it out. Because I have a friend and I was giving him food and all this stuff. I wouldn't give him money because I knew he was an alcoholic and he'd buy, and I love him. But he finally told me one day, because he loved me, and he said to me, Rick, quit buying me food. I don't need food. I can get food anywhere I want. I just want money for alcohol.
Absolutely.
And I said, I can't do that. And he goes, I know, because you love me too much. And I said, exactly.
And it is out of love that you don't. It's called tough love.
Right.
It's
Whitebird
tough
is
love.
another one. Thank you for mentioning them. Other
Absolutely.
agencies. So somebody asked a question, and Gina happens to have the information. They were asking, what is the percentage of, and age-wise, of our people that are on our streets? So why don't you
Here.
find? She looked up some
So,
information for Lane County.
According to the 2018 PIT report for Lane County, the highest percentage of sheltered and unsheltered people range between the ages of 25 and 44.
So it's 25. Most of the people, 35 to 38% of the, in fact, 30. All of them together, of sheltered and unsheltered, 35% are 25 to 44. The next high percentage would be 45 to 54 is 21%, and the same with 55 to 64. So a lot of it is younger. I'm almost 60. 44 is young to me. So it's 25 to 60. And what was the other number we had? And here's you guys. Let me read you another statistic. So right now the city council is looking at this ordinance, this panhandling ordinance, which we're going to be talking to City Councilor Mike Clark on Thursday at 10 o'clock at the car wash. He's going to go through and talk with me about this. But there's an anti-panhandling ordinance which would cites the driver, the driver, for giving something out, for endangering people by giving something out of your car. Is that correct?
It's actually an illegal transfer ordinance, and that means that you can't hand anybody out of your car while it's on the road. You have to pull over and park on the side of the road.
So that is being considered by the council, and right now, as we understand, it's a 4-4 split, and the mayor will have to break that tie if it comes out the way it is. So here's the thing you should hear. Another statistic for 2018 survey, sheltered and unsheltered. Where's the number with Eugene? That's what I was looking for. You know, the one that had the thousands?
Here you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
This
read that one.
So in all of Eugene, it states that there are 1,435
Sheltered and unsheltered people.
right. So the sheltered is 490, while the unsheltered is 945.
So almost 1,000 people in Eugene that are unsheltered. In Springfield,
There's 170 total, with 31 sheltered and 139 unsheltered. But pretty sure that the 2019 report will say that that is a lot lower, just from hearing from Springfield residents. Cottage Grove is 20, with 20 unsheltered. Cresswell, 5. Florence, 23 with 1 sheltered and 22 unsheltered. Blue River, 4 unsheltered. Veneta, 28 with 28 unsheltered. And Lowell, 1 and 1.
so that's how it breaks down in a community. So back again, that figure with Eugene, 1,435 people, sheltered and unsheltered. Almost 1,000 of those are unsheltered. And then Springfield, right next door, where we have that ordinance that Gina and we were just talking about, 139. So obviously there's somebody out there knows that where you're welcome and where you're not. And we're seeing a lot of theft and a lot of businesses spending a lot of money cleaning up. And again, this is 2 separate issues as we see it: homelessness and drug addiction. And we need to be, I care about both of them, and so does Gina. As she spent time in the camps down there doing it, go ask some questions. This is what bothers me the most is, and you guys, really fast, the only reason we can do this show is because of Buck Sanitary Service. The Buck Stops Here is sponsored by Scott over at Buck Sanitary Service. I gave some emails that Gina and I had, sent them to him. He said, let's do it. We need to get this conversation out. And you can disagree with us. That's okay.
And I also have to let you guys know that most of the people that I spoke to come from outside of Oregon. They're not Oregon residents. They are actually traveled here intentionally for our resources.
And Mike Clark is on here right now. I'm just going to not call him out, but City Councilor Mike Clark, and I'm not holding my breath on this passing, this ordinance passing, but still working it out. So if you are tired of this, and we're not saying this is the end all. In fact, what I think we should do is we need to get treatment for these people, some way to get them. Obviously, you have to get their attention, but you also have to, and I think if we just put out the word that we're not we're gonna get tough with people and make sure that this is happening. I think that would alleviate a big part of the problem.
Well, not only that, but I do need to point out that in order for someone to receive treatment, they have to want to treat. They have to want the treatment. They have to want to be clean and sober, or it doesn't work. And then you're spending thousands and millions of dollars on treatment, and these people are getting out and doing their own thing, or they're just not going.
So how do you know the difference, though? Because I know several people who I just had Michelle Price, a good friend of mine. She's a former meth addict, and it took her. She was for 14 or 15 years. But she got off of it. She wanted it,
and that's the key. They have to want it, and most of the people I spoke to didn't want it, and they have no intention. The idea of living without their drug is so overwhelming and so powerful that, I mean, they spend all night working for it, and then they spend all day chasing after it. So, and a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, what about the mental illness? They're mentally ill. Well, for 2018 here in Eugene, 547 people self-reported. Now, that's just saying, oh, hey, I'm mentally ill.
So it wasn't a diagnosis.
It's not a diagnosis.
Okay.
And 412 people self-admitted to chronic drug and alcohol use that they stated that prevented them from stable housing. So they're aware that their disease has cost them jobs and housing. And I'm not talking about the drug addict, the functional drug addict or functional alcoholic that can go to work the next day or whatnot. These people are literally sick the minute they wake up in the morning from withdrawals. And they're also very compassionate with each other in the sense that if they have a substance and they see someone withdrawing, they will share what they have with that person because they know what it's like to be sick.
I had a guy in my office, though, just a couple weeks ago, and I told these guys here, he came in my office and he was a heroin addict, and he said that some of the folks in one of these camps down here tried to get him in their tent and was trying to hurt him. Now, that could have been just what he was thinking, but he was scared, and then he told me he had hepatitis C, and I felt really bad, so I looked up a bus schedule for him, and then I had to escort him out of my office because I needed to, I couldn't do any more. I'm not an expert at this thing, but so, you know, there's going to be temptation. We were both really nervous about doing this, and because we understand this is it's really easy for people to try to make us the villain,
right?
And to try to say, you know, you're saying something because you and I had people come on my thing after the last one going, you hater and all this stuff. Just don't even go there. Because that is so, you cannot put your words and cram them down our throats. She cared about her ex-husband enough to try to go and help him. And even after he'd done some not very great things at all, but that's another story. And when I walk by that, I never would make fun of people out there or say anything like that, but it's also, there's a point where if you're truly caring about the human being, to leave people like that and enable it as a community, that to me is worse than you calling me names. And so I think we should at least talk about this issue in our community, and at least, and don't be angry, don't start pointing at them and making them the bad guy. But we need to talk about homelessness and what we can do to create truly affordable housing for people. And the city council, you could get off your butt and open up the urban growth boundary so we could actually build some properties and some houses in our community. That would be one thing if we really, really wanted to solve that problem. That would be one thing we could do, small step. But if we want to help people who are drug addicts, is leaving them on the streets and allowing them to live like that, is that what a civil society does?
There definitely needs to be several different solutions to help those that want to get help, or hold them accountable for and give them consequences. Maybe court-ordered drug and alcohol treatment that goes for longer than 30 days, and when they get out, if they choose to go back to that lifestyle and they commit another crime, then I don't know, bye-bye. Something has to give, though, because we're going to continue to get all these people coming in from different states who are in the same condition because Eugene in Seattle is what I keep getting. Eugene in Seattle. Anyone I've talked to, it's well.
You saw the special they did on Seattle's dying?
I did.
Did you see the Rhode Island? Do you think something like that, where they mandatorily house them and then put them and then do some drug rehab with them, that, and maybe not the program
Absolutely.
they were doing, but,
and not only that, but how about transitional sober living and then transitional housing?
and we have programs available.
We have transitional housing, and we have all kinds of stuff available here in Eugene. Just to rattle off a few, you have supportive housing, halfway housing, transitional housing, which, by the way, covers free living and rent for 24 months, which gives them 2 years to get jobs, sober, clean.
It seems like we've got all these services, but we still can't get wrap our arms around the fact that these people have to get into that program. And sometimes it takes, just like with your kids, it takes being tough, a tough parent role.
It really does. And the community needs to be the parent and play the tough parent role and get tougher.
If we truly are compassionate.
Absolutely, because enabling is not being compassionate or
It's
loving.
really looking the other way.
It really is.
Do we want to live in a community where people shooting up heroin outside a Jazzy Ladies restaurant we overlook it?
Or
we turn away, or where people scream at women in the streets of Eugene, I want to blank you, and that's acceptable. We let it go. I mean, is that, and okay, so now I'm just going to rail on this just a teeny bit. Just before we started the show, I had an email from an aunt, and her 13-year-old nephew died of an overdose a week ago here in our community.
And it was a 22-year-old that supplied the kids.
A 13-year-old. And she wants to come on the show, and I said, you bet your ass. I'll get Scott. Scott will pay for it. We'll get you on here. So was that caused by this? I don't know. But if we're a community that overlooks addiction, at one side of our mouth says, we want to help people with addictions. On the other side, we just ignore it and sit there. Like, how does that translate into what's happening to our children and going on in our community?
And how about when you take your children to parks and they're picking up these dirty needles left behind, or they're actually there trying to play and someone's shooting up just across the field from them in eyes view? I mean, I'm hearing all these things in the community, and you can't take your kids to the park anymore.
Right.
They can't walk to school because there's encampments on the sidewalk blocking the sidewalk from the kids being able to get there, and there's needles on the ground. And yes, there are lots of needles where there's drug users. And
I have friends who live by some of the parks right here in town, and in nice little neighborhoods, and they can't let and these are people who I would put on the progressive scale. They're super progressive, interesting, wonderful people, and they're going, enough is enough. I can't even let my kid go to the park because I'm afraid they're going to find a needle, because they have.
Right.
And so again, this is not anti-anything.
Nope.
We are being proactive. Gina has been there. She's seen it, not on the streets. She's been with her ex-husband and met these folks, and is just giving us a glimpse of what's going on.
And I want to make it clear that it's not our homeless community that are committing these crimes and doing this and doing that. It is this subculture that has, I'll just say, is continuously growing. And the more we enable this subculture, the more it's going to grow. So you're never ever going to be able to fix it or have enough solutions for homelessness, because our homeless community is going to, how do I want to say that? Our homeless community is going to be covered up by this.
Well, they're getting swallowed.
That's it. Swallowed. They're being swallowed.
And people hate when you say this, but I'm saying the truly homeless community, who's not choosing to be homeless,
Right.
but is suffering and doesn't have the money to pay their bills, and living in cars. They're
Working and living in cars.
Yeah, working and living in cars is being swallowed up by this other culture, and it's not fair to lump them into the same place. And so, as a community, what do? Well, you don't get angry and you don't say unkind things,
Right.
but you get active, and you get real active. And so you need to let the city council know and city leaders know that this isn't good enough.
And before y'all rattle off about mental illness and the mentally ill, sure, there is a small population of mentally ill people. However, in the subculture, what you don't understand is that methamphetamines and heroin can cause delirium, paranoia, persisting dementia, psychotic disorder that'll mimic schizophrenia, depression, sleep deprivation, PTSD, and you can bet that our homeless community and also this sub community, living on the street, you're going to have PTSD. There's violence, there's theft, and with any type of drug use, and not to mention whatever past they come from.
If you don't go and ask questions about this, I don't know how. I think everyone in our city council should be down in the street down there asking these folks questions, because they'll tell you they're really open about it, and they'll talk with you about it. But I've talked to truly homeless people over at Willamette Lane at the swimming pool, where they take showers. They get to shower for 50 cents, which, thank you, Willamette Lane. I think that's a wonderful service that you provide. And I get in conversations with people, and you ask them, do you go downtown Eugene? No, it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. They're not going down there. They have camps outside of town. They're not coming into downtown Eugene to hang out with that, because they say it's dangerous.
Right.
So,
And every time they're allowed to camp somewhere, in the community, say on a business property or a homeowner's property, or just a property owner in general, when they pick up and leave, because I guess they can only stay for a certain amount of time and then the city will come in. When they leave, any of their feces, dirty needles, or their trash, that is all the property owner, the business owner, and the homeowner's financial responsibility to clean and pick up. And if you don't pick it up by a certain time, the city can fine you. And
there's a guy in Portland.
Was it Gresham?
Yeah, I posted a video.
Was it like
$55,000.
Yeah, because
paying.
you have to do it with a hazmat, and you have to hire hazmat, and you have to be able to prove to the city that you provided such service to make sure that it was properly contained. So there's homeowners who can afford $5,000. I mean, you're a homeowner, you're paying a mortgage, whatever, you got kids in college or in school, and unfortunately you can't evict these people off your property once they've set up and pitched a tent. The city says that that's their home. So it's just not fair.
We don't know. I wish I had a solution. But honestly, that's up to us as a community to make that decision. But what we need to stop doing is pretending like it's not here. And we need to stop making it into sound something better than it really is.
Because it's getting worse, and it's not going to get better, and Eugene's going to get swallowed up.
And if we don't do something, we're going to get more phone calls about 13-year-old kids who are dying of overdoses. We need Constitution to call, email, and go. Here's the thing that you don't want to do. Don't get involved in a fight. And don't make people who have different opinions. If you have a different opinion than us, fine, state it, but don't try to make us into the villain, because we're bringing up something as we've seen it. We've done the research, we've asked the questions. If you're in the industry, then let us know what doesn't work and does work. You're the experts too. But what we're seeing is this it's almost like we're almost soft pedaling it and making drug addiction softer than it really is. And it's like, that's scary to me, that we're calling it things that are other than what it is. And it destroyed your marriage, it destroyed your ex-husband.
Yes.
It did a lot of damage to your son.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's a cycle that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And as a community, if we want to put blinders on, it's not going to go away.
No. And you do know that if they get state assistance like food stamps, they might use a little bit on that card, but the majority, and I'm not saying all, the majority of this subculture have people that they know in the housed community that will give them cash for their food stamps. So let's say, for example,
What?
if I give them $20 I'll get like $40 in food stamps that I can use on this person's card. So they give them the cash and they go buy their drugs. So there's the abuse of the system that is set up to help people. All these people qualify for OHP Plus, Oregon Health Plan Plus. It covers mental health. It covers any type of dental and medical.
I have a question for you. Sandy on here says, what would you do? What would you all do if it was your family?
It was my family. It was my family.
And what did you do?
I did what I could to get him the help that he needed, but again, they have to want it. They can't do it because you told them to, or because they don't want to let you down. They have to want it.
Would you and I'm just going to throw out a question. If it's uncomfortable, just don't do it.
Go ahead.
But do you wish that back a while ago that he would have been arrested and put into forced to go into a program, or what do you think?
He's been arrested quite a few times. I do believe that something needs to be enforced, because I don't believe that when you're so deep into your addiction that you can think clearly enough, because you can't handle the thought of not having that fixed because you're so deathly ill without it. And I do kind of feel like maybe if they're arrested for their crimes and they test positive for drugs, court ordered maybe treatment center and kind of force them into that. I know it's kind of hypocritical and what's real and what's not, but some people have actually gotten sober in prison. I actually know someone who went to prison and came out, went to sober living, and was in sober living for a year and has been sober for 2 years.
Sandy says there needs to be community outreach that helps these people. I think we have that.
We do have that. There are...
That's trying to help the people.
Absolutely. But again, they have to want the help. And there is a small percentage of those that do want the help. And those people know where to get their resources and how to utilize those resources if they want them. They know how to get them. However, most of these guys don't want to get help. They don't want to be housed. They don't want to be clean and sober. They don't want to work. They don't want Uncle Sam taxing their money when they can go make $50, $75 a day doing whatever it is that they're doing and not be taxed and live the way that they want with their own rules. They do not want to conform to society's rules and laws.
So
and I'm not making this up. This
right,
is
she
from
was there.
multiple people.
And I know some people that have no experience with this are just going to climb all over us and say, you're being mean, you're being mean. No, we've talked with them personally.
I'm not being mean. I'm talking from personal experience. I've spoken to well over 40 individuals in this particular culture of living intense camping,
and addiction.
And these people, some of them are nice, others not so nice. Some of them are violent, but the majority of them are really nice people. They're just really sick. And drug and alcohol addiction is a disease, but you can't make people get help that don't want it. Those are the people we need to stop enabling, because if you stop enabling them, it makes it harder for them to obtain their drug. And so they'll either hit the lowest of the low and say, okay, something's got to change, or they're going to move on. So
our actions by not doing anything could actually, and I believe, are probably we're just as guilty. We're causing
Absolutely.
a community. We've made a community where this is not compassion. This isn't sympathy or empathy.
Right.
And I'm not speaking against any of the agencies that go out. I know people at Shelter Care and St. Vinny's. They go out there and they work and they understand these folks. They befriend them because they're trying to get them to get to that point where they go, I want something better than this.
Absolutely.
And so that's one part of that is being done. Those are some of the things being done. But there's a bunch of people out there that's not working. And I think if we just made this not a place where people can get help, but it's not a community that's just giving everything away. That would alleviate some of the problem that we're seeing in Eugene right now, where we're attracting this subgroup.
And we're getting new and new campers every day coming in from out of state because, again, Eugene and Seattle are viewed as sanctuaries for this type of subculture. And we need to end the subculture so that we're not so overwhelmed that we can't actually take care of the homeless people. And then if those who want to get clean and sober want to get help because now it's harder for them to obtain their drugs and alcohol, then maybe they might want to make some life choices.
Ashley Hicks on here, she's a city councilor at Roseburg, says, what do you think about creating a work program for folks getting out of jail or treatment programs like the CCC?
I'm all over that. That is fabulous. And you know, for drug and alcohol treatment too, that they both need to go coincide. If someone's getting out of drug and alcohol treatment, let's have some second chance employers that are willing to help out the people transitioning out of prison. The people in prison should go to transitional housing that'll help them while they're working. Let's give them jobs. Let's give them some
value.
Job training. Yes.
Now Sandy says, as most everything, no one knows until you've walked in their shoes. What's the root problem? That where you can find your answer, but you have to get them to a point, Sandy, where they want to look for the root answer. And sometimes I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us humans are pretty much the same, and we all have our addictions to something. And I have to, in order for me to change, the same thing has to happen. I've got to get to that place where I'm willing to go look at this stuff. And how are they going to find it if we just let them sit here in tents and suffer and basically drug themselves until they die?
And Sandy, I'm going to address that and kind of put myself out there with my own personal experience. When I was 15, I got into drugs and alcohol, and I ran away from home when I was living on the street. And my mother had already been through this with my brother, so she was experienced in this. And you know, she shut the door on me. She gave me tough love, and she gave me no place to stay. My friends' parents wouldn't allow me in. I was on the street, and I learned very quickly when all of my go-tos were gone, it was time to snap out of it. And if it wasn't for her tough love, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I know what it's like to sleep on a bench in the middle of the night in the cold, in the middle of the winter. I know what it's like to crawl underneath the car to stay dry. I know what it's like to be hungry.
Sandy, great point. She agrees, stop the suffering while they find the root. Absolutely. Yeah, how are they ever going to find the root if they're just deadening that pain? With
Absolutely.
Drugs, they're never going to get to that place where, and somebody has to help them through that process if we're truly humane people.
That's true, but again, they have to want it.
Right, and sometimes wanting it means you get to the end of your rope, or you're somewhere where you're forced to find it or look for it.
And if we keep making it easy for them to continue in the cycle of their disease, it's going to kill them. It's going to kill them, and we are contributing to the end of their life by enabling them.
So it's what kind of community do we want? Do we want a truly compassionate community that doesn't enable people, that cares about them enough to actually do something for them? Is that what Eugene is? Is that our, I mean, is that what our reputation should be, as a truly compassionate community? For those of you who disagree, is name calling and labeling going to change anything?
Absolutely
No.
not.
And think before you start doing that, because you could just be the bigger part of the problem.
And please don't ignore these people on the street.
No.
Please walk by, say, hey, how you doing? Give them a smile when you're driving by, honk, wave at them. Don't treat them like they're invisible, because they're not. Every time they're treated like they're invisible, it's another dagger. And it's another way to make them want to just cover up how they're feeling.
The guy, Jacob, the guy in the hallway that came into my office, so I see him in the hallway, this was a couple weeks ago, and I just started talking. I said, "Are you one of the guys in the camp?" He goes, "No, they tried to get me in there last night and shoot me up." And I'm a guy that I just, somebody's story is somebody's story. I'm not here to judge him.
Right.
So I just listened to his story, and I said, "Well, Jacob, I hope things get better for you." And he goes, "Thanks, man. I really appreciate that." And then I came up in my office. A few minutes later, he walks in and sits in my chair, and he's like, I'm kind of a little bit freaked out, I'm like going, "Okay." So I said, "What do you need?" And he goes, "I want a bus ticket." And I did totally, but then I drew a line. Where I said, "Okay, I need to get back to work, Jacob, and I gotta get you out there. So I'm gonna walk you to the door and let you out." And then he looked at me and he says, "Thank you."
Absolutely.
All he was thanking me for was kindness. He didn't give a shit about me finding a bus ticket for him. And then he wanted money for the bus ticket, and I said, "I can't give you money for a bus ticket because I don't know that that's what you're gonna really use it for."
Right.
And he just looked at me and he smiled. And if you're honest with people and just kind to them, that can go a long way. But kindness was also giving Jacob a line. And, I think people will remember that. We want them to get to a point where they can get out of it, maybe by being kind and waving, acknowledging someone on the street without you having to be acknowledged back.
Right.
Maybe that's the breakthrough where they remember, there was 5 people in the last week that actually looked at me.
I'm worth something.
Yeah, I have value.
Exactly.
We are not valuing these people by letting them do this to our community. That isn't value. That's just perpetrating the crime. So anyway, in the moment counseling to each individual in kindness, not snarl at them, you will feel better than snarling and stories you would be and something. These people all have stories.
They do all have stories.
Yeah, they all do have stories, and they didn't get there
by themselves.
No.
Some of them, I will tell you one story of a younger gentleman who actually attended Harvard University in Cambridge, and he took Adderall to help him study. And while taking Adderall to stay awake and study, he became addicted. Excuse me. When that didn't work anymore, because you build a tolerance, someone got him to try methamphetamines. And then from there, he went to heroin and fentanyl. And he traveled here because he heard that we're tolerant. And plus, he was running away from his family. Another individual was in a car accident, which he gets disability for, by the way. Lives in a tent, chooses not to re-enter society at any point in the rest of his life. He's an older gentleman who was a professor in a university, and wonderful man, but he got addicted to painkillers, and the addiction of painkillers led to methamphetamines, which led to heroin, and they all mix their heroin with fentanyl down there. So the majority, I won't say all, but a large majority of the fentanyl is available. The fentanyl is mixed in with the heroin, and I've witnessed it myself.
So just because I'm stupid, I don't know what that means. What is fentanyl put into heroin? What is that?
Well, they draw it out with a syringe after they heat the fentanyl patch up, and then they draw it out. And
what does fentanyl do?
Well, fentanyl is a painkiller, and it's I mean, human beings get like macrograms, but these people aren't pharmacists, so they're drawing up large doses of fentanyl that would pretty much kill a horse and an elephant, and they're injecting it into their bodies, and that's why people will die immediately from fentanyl. If they just do like one patch, then they'll cook up some heroin on a spoon add water, and I only know this because I watched a guy come into the camp and say, "Hey, I heard that I can talk to this person and get some of this," and my eyes kind of went, "Oh." And so, like me, being curious and inquisitive, I'm talking to this guy, getting him to warm up to me, and he just tied off his arm and he just started doing his thing, heating it up on a spoon, and drew it up in a syringe and just injected it into his arm right in front of me. And he was just passing through. He wasn't even a part of that camp. He didn't know anybody in there. But this is what happens. Word gets round, you know, hey, do you know where I can find this? And, oh, yeah, you know, well, if you go this way, you talk to this person and you can get it. And fentanyl is really big out there right now.
What I think is interesting is when you were just saying that people always, I've had criticism of people going, what does it matter if they're from here or not? They're human beings. Well, what matters is to show and to see that we are becoming a destination place for drug addicts.
A sanctuary.
A sanctuary.
Is the word that was used with me.
So that does matter. I mean, it matters to me. It might not matter to you,
right,
but it does matter to me that my community is being known as a sanctuary for drug addicts. And
I've met people from Colorado. I've met people from Michigan. I've met people from New York.
when I've been down there asking questions and I've talked to different groups of people, I have never found anyone, maybe 3 people from Eugene, and all the rest of the folks were from other places. And all you have to do is ask them. It's not like I'm doing some big survey. And someone asked on here, how many do you know that get clean off the streets? I think, you know, what we need to do is, we're not the experts on that. And
I've known 4. I've known 4, and they're doing very well to this day. And they know even more people that have done it.
So it is possible.
It's possible, but these are people that wanted it. And
that got broken to the point.
And even they don't enable the people that they check in on once in a while still living that lifestyle. They don't give them money. Every once in a great while, like on holidays, they'll cook meals and go down there and hand out meals for the holidays, so because no one deserves to be hungry.
Right. So that it's not I know from just the news things that I've done and the things of the past, it's not super successful. Stop trying. And I was on Mugshot. It's a Facebook page the other day, and I looked, and all these people were talking about this guy, and I looked, and he's a friend of mine, and he's back in jail, and there's his picture, and I love this dude, and back in jail, and he's a meth addict, and when he's off meth, he's a great guy. When he's on meth, we don't see each other because he doesn't want to come around and be embarrassed. But so anyway, we're going to wrap this up, guys. We could not do this without Gina, who's out there doing her thing. Buck Sanitary Service, the buck stops here. You know, it's not like they agree with everything in our conversation. I don't expect them to, but they agree that conversations need to happen.
Definitely. Awareness needs to be brought out into the community. We need to start talking about solutions and resources, and we need to stop enabling.
Sandy, it's not really the same ever. If you look, Eugene and Portland and Seattle have a lot more. You go in the Midwest, you go other places. There were some people in that special in Seattle from Iowa, and they said, why are they letting this go on? People in other parts of the country don't understand this. Not what we have here. Homelessness, yes. A sanctuary for drug addicts, no. Yes, drugs are a problem everywhere, but this is something different than that, in my opinion. So you guys, anyway, so coming up, it's 118 degrees out. Whatever, Sandy, that's fine. I don't know what that means, but yeah, I think you're doing your thing. Anyway, so you guys, you are welcome for the openness and honesty, and if it at least sparks a conversation in our community. Again, one thing you can do is you can write your city council, and you can say kindly, a kind letter. Don't be nasty and mean, and don't be accusatory, and don't say, why do you always do this? Write a letter and say, this is my concern. Drug addiction in my community is killing people. And write your concern and say, if you support this initiative that's coming up to not be able to hand things outside as one thing we could do, that's great. Sandy, and it's wonderful that you disagree, and that's great. Just be kind about it, and you are right there, but don't be snide, just be kind. I appreciate that.
And that's it. Remember to be kind. Donate to your shelters, to your warming centers, to your food banks.
Take your old used goods to
Absolutely.
Goodwill and St. Vinny de Paul's and all those kind of places, because all that money goes back out to help the homeless,
right back
really
to the
homeless people in our community. So there are things we can do, and there's a lot of positive stuff going on. But as a community, we also have to decide what we're going to be tolerant of,
Right.
and tolerating the unkindness to people who are drug addicted and leaving them in tents in the rain and a shelter like that. That isn't kind in my definition of kind. It might be in some people's, but it's not in mine. And I think there's things we can do about that. So anyway, and also to take care of people who are truly homeless,
Absolutely.
who are just trying to get, paycheck to paycheck and living in cars.
Right.
They need our help and our services too.
And try to remember not to clump them in with this other subculture.
People need to, Mike Clark, the city councilor here in Eugene, people need to advocate with their counselors about what they think the answers are. That's where the disagreement is. Okay, so that's from another city councilor, who Mike does happen to agree with this position, at least on the ordinance. So you need to tell, if you live in an area of town, you need to let your city councilor know how you feel. Because you guys, if you're apathetic, it'll just continue, and that's what we've done for years, is we don't speak out. And in the 80s, I worked there in a plasma center, and it was going on then. Well, Sandy, you should come back, because you would not believe it's the same place. So it's easy to say, I remember Eugene in the 80s and did this, but you're not living here, and you're not seeing it for yourself. We're seeing it, and it's pretty bad right now. And you can ask anybody. People are very concerned about their community. So, and I appreciate your comments, but again, if you don't live here and you haven't been here recently, you're really not knowing what's going on here right now. And we should be intolerant of the treatment of people the way that we're treating them by leaving them out there on the street. That should be that's truly, I'm intolerant of leaving people that way. That's wrong. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Again, thank you, Scott Weld over at Buck Sanitary Service. Gina, thank you for contacting me after a show and being willing to do this. You're going to take some heat from it.
Oh, I'm sure I will.
And I'm sure we all will. But you guys, you know what? It's our town. And we should be able to have these kind of conversations with each other without labeling and calling people names and trying to make someone the villain. I don't think there is a villain except for apathy. I think apathy is the big villain right now. So take this, share it on your page if you choose to. Thank you so much for paying attention, and please be active and do notify your counselor. All you have to do is go on the Eugene City website. All the counselors' emails are right there. You can write up one email and send them to each different counselor. It's really simple to do. You don't have to go, this isn't going to take a big thing. And don't say a lot. Just say your opinion, and that we need to get a handle on this. Because, quite frankly, they're politicians.
And not only that, but the money that the city is throwing into doing all these cleanups and whatnot, that money would be better in use to providing resources that can help these people.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the thousands and thousands of dollars that
what was it, 1.7 or 1.2 million to clean up the butterfly lot or something like that the city did?
Tons of money spent on this, on cleaning up, and we shouldn't be doing that. And instead, we should be spending that money helping them clean up.
Yeah. That would be
the smart, tolerant thing to do.
And really, they all have $1 at some point in their week. There's no reason why they can't go to the dollar store and pick up a roll of garbage bags. I know a ton of people that actually haul out their own garbage while living in tents, so there's really just no excuse.
Right. All right, you guys, thank you. Have a good day. We will see you. What's going on later this week? Let me see. I got to look at my schedule here. Tomorrow we have a show with Mindworks here where my office is, and we're going to introduce you to some different businesses in town and what they're doing. You'll have chances to win things too. That's kind of fun. And then on Thursday, Mike Clark, City Councilor, will join me at the car wash, and we'll have a conversation about that ordinance that they're discussing. And then at noon, we're going to have Kiefer Mazda, and I'm going to tell you about Women for Oregon Agriculture. These are a group of women who are trying to get the word out about farmers. They do grow our food, just in case you didn't know. And that's all coming up this week on Get Real with Rick Dancer. All right, thanks again, Scott Weld over at Buck Sanitary Service. And
keep it real.
Keep it, yeah, and don't slap us.